Hello friends, welcome to the continuation of Wiggly Question Wednesday. Alright, I'm going to try and talk a little bit less today because I didn't get through very many questions yesterday at all. I'm sorry about that, but it took like 18 minutes or something. So I'm going to try and talk a little less when I answer the questions. The first question I've got today is, what's your favourite song you sang while in the Wiggles? And that's come from H. McKenna 09. Now, I did answer a similar question yesterday, and I think I got to the conclusion that Monkey Dance was my favourite song that I sang in the Wiggles. Close second was maybe Dancing in the Sand, but there's lots of great songs I sang in the Wiggles. I mean, if we look at songs that I sang on albums in the studio but never sang live, well, there'd be a heap of those, I reckon. And there's a lot of good songs. In fact, I reckon if somebody said to me, name every song the Wiggles sang, I couldn't even tell you. You could probably tell me that the Wiggles did a certain song and I wouldn't even remember it. So I can't tell you what my favourite song that I sang in the studio but never sang live was, but for live, I reckon it was Monkey Dance. Now, next question, if I can call it up. At Disneyland and Walt Disney World, which Disney characters did you meet? And that comes from Kyle Lindsay 100. Great username there. Okay, so when we played Disney World and Disneyland, well, we met Mickey Mouse and Minnie Mouse, Donald Duck, Goofy, Pluto, probably met Cinderella too, but I definitely remember meeting those first guys. They were a lot of fun to meet. You know, it was a big thrill to meet these Disney characters, being just these four blokes from Australia who travelled overseas and took their brand of entertainment to the world, meeting some of the greatest creators of children's entertainment, family entertainment, being Mickey Mouse and Minnie Mouse. What an honour that was. It was really exciting. So a great opportunity to perform at Disney World and Disneyland, and I'll never forget it. See, I'm talking a lot less now, getting through more questions. The problem is I've got to keep scrolling through the questions on my phone. Okay, so this has come from Swan TV. They've said, oh, yay. My question is, how did you come up with the now famous name for the band or group? So the name The Wiggles came up when we were writing our first album of songs. We were recording it at the Macquarie University Institute of Early Childhood in Waverley. It's not there anymore. It's now a school of some sort. And we were in the big lecture theatre there. We'd gone in the holiday period and we had it all to ourselves. We were recording songs and we were talking about a name for the group. Now, I think it was Murray said something like, we need some sort of name like, you know, like the Beatles or something or other, like Anthony was already in a group called the Cockroaches. So, and I think the Cockroaches actually, that name was taken from a name that the Rolling Stones had used when they did some gigs in, what we call here in Australia, pubs. So little bars and things that they were playing at one time. I think they'd called themselves the Cockroaches and that's where they took that name from. So we wanted something like the something or other. And we had a song called Get Ready to Wiggle that was on our first CD, which was written by Anthony's brother John, which was actually written for the Cockroaches originally, and it had a different title. We didn't use that title. We called it Get Ready to Wiggle. Actually, no, it was called Get Ready to Wiggle, but the lyrics were slightly different, not appropriate for children, so we changed them to Get Ready to Wiggle. We've been ready for so long, get ready to wiggle. So we thought that's a fun song for kids. So we thought, let's call ourselves The Wiggles. And from that moment forward, that's what it was. Never changed. And yeah, it became the name for the now famous band or group called The Wiggles. So there's that answer to that question. Alec Borden has said, does your first Wiggles shirt still fit you? In brackets, the one you wore in the Wiggles' first year. Well, that shirt is a real work of art, I've got to say. That first CD cover, and we'll put a link to it somewhere here, maybe, I'm sure we can find it somewhere on YouTube where you can have a look at the Wiggles' first album cover. The shirts we wore, okay, so the brief for the shirts we were wearing on that album cover was wear something bright, wear something colourful. We were just going to wear black pants, but we wanted colourful shirts. Murray had a red shirt with white polka dots on it, I think it was, or was it stars? I can't remember. See, this is where my Wiggles brain is failing me. Murray had stars, I think it was a red shirt with white stars. Jeff already had some sort of shirt that was bright and colourful. Philip Wiltshire, who was the fifth Wiggle, I think he had the polka dots actually. Philip had sort of like a burgundy colour shirt with round white polka dots. I had to find something, and I think Anthony did as well. I can't quite remember about Anthony. I know I had to find something. So I just went out to the shops and found the most awful looking shirt you could imagine. It looked like, without wanting to be crude, but it looked like somebody had vomited on this shirt. It's just bright and colourful blue, green, yellow. Yeah. Anyway, that was the look we went for the first album. So the very first album cover has these horrible looking shirts on them. Well, in my case, it's horrible. Murray's shirt was pretty tasteful, actually. There was nothing wrong with that. And Philip's was pretty good too. Anthony, I think, had brown. Maybe Anthony had stars. Have a look on this picture here. I'm sure we can find a picture of it since I do this chat, and you'll see what it is. I've got no idea. Because it was 20-something years ago. It was a long, long time ago. And do I have the shirt? I don't think I do. Does it still fit? Probably not, because I was 19 at the time. I was very, very slim, very slender. I was a size 34 waist. Actually, no, I was probably a 32 back then. I'm now a 36. I might be coming back to a 34. But I was probably a lot slimmer around the top back then. In fact, the guys used to call me Beanpole. That was my nickname in the Wiggles. Anthony called me Beanpole one day because that's like the pole you stick beside a beanstalk. As the beanstalk grows up, it grows up around the beanpole, and I was as tall and skinny as a beanpole. I'm now no longer that tall and skinny. I'm no longer a beanpole. I'm a lot more solid. Now, this doesn't really answer the question directly, and I'm talking again. We're not going to get through all the questions. So, no, the shirt doesn't fit me because I don't have it anymore. I have an alternate shirt that I bought, and this one is more like somebody vomited on the shirt. It's more a yellowy sort of colour, and I think it's on display at the Powerhouse Museum that I spoke about yesterday. So you can probably check it out at the Powerhouse Museum. It's probably on display there. That one might fit me because it was a little bit bigger than the other one. It was cut a little bit bigger than the original shirt. So, in the spirit of trying to talk a bit less, I'm moving on to the next question now, and this one comes from Thomas Fan 101. What was it like making the Wiggles movie, and are there any interesting stories from behind the scenes? Well, the Wiggles movie was a real challenge. We'd never done anything sort of as, dare I say, professional before that, because we'd always produced things ourselves. The Wiggles movie, I mean, we were making that sort of for 20th Century Fox. It wasn't, made by them, but we knew that we had a deal to distribute it through 20th Century Fox. So there was a lot of pressure on us for that. The four of us were executive producers with Jeff's brother, Hilton. Hilton Fat was one of the EPs. We had set up a different company to produce this, and we had people invest in that company to make the movie. So there was a lot of pressure on us to do this, to do it properly. We wanted to make sure it was good enough to be distributed internationally, and we kind of knew that this movie was what was going to leapfrog us into international territories. The fact that we were making a movie meant that people were going to take us more seriously, so we had to do it well. A lot of early starts on the movie, so like turning up at 5 a.m, which, we kind of did for TV, but I think we shot the movie over 5 weeks. So it was 5 weeks of consistently turning up at 5 a.m. most days and finishing around 5 or 6 o'clock at night. And yeah, it was hard work, but it was a lot of fun. It had a lot of different challenges in it that we hadn't faced with making TV or videos. So it was a new experience, which gave us a whole lot of new skills, which was great. We didn't really do another movie after that, but it helped us. I mean, one thing with the Wiggles, we always wanted to try and have fun with whatever it was that we were doing, whether it was a movie or TV or video content, DVDs. So we always tried to make it fun. It was a little bit harder on the movie set because we were working with actors who were proper actors. I mean, none of us were proper actors. I mean, if you've ever seen anything the Wiggles have done, you'll know we are not actors. We're barely dancers at the best of times, but we could deliver lines and we could talk to the camera like we had to do to talk to children. But acting was something that we weren't great at, and we were working with great actors like Joanne Samuels and Tony Harvey, and we just had to really lift our game to work with these people who were used to delivering lines, line after line after line, and yeah, that was a bit of a challenge for us. But I think we showed them a side of the industry that they hadn't seen before, and maybe we taught them how to have a little bit of fun on the set as well. So any interesting stories from behind the scenes? Yes. There's a scene in the movie where we are, gosh, I don't know where it is in the film because I haven't watched it for a long time, but I know when we shot it, we were at the place that was the school, and we were in the big red car waiting to take off somewhere. And being the driver of the big red car, I mean, that thing wasn't the greatest piece of machinery ever, and it had its faults and it had its, risks associated with driving it. It was safe, but you just never knew what you were going to get with the big red car. And this one was a real car. It was a petrol engine, unlike the big red car that we used on stage. In our stage shows, it was a golf buggy converted to something that looked like the big red car. But the one in the movie had a petrol engine, was pretty much a real car. It was built on a VW chassis, I think a VW Beetle chassis. Anyway, getting back to this story. See, talk. Don't know when to shut up. We were taking off in the big red car, and I put my foot down on the accelerator, and it kind of really took off. And I take off in the car, and I can remember the other Wiggles in the back as we're going. It's taking off and it's fishtailing as we're going, and they're all going, whoa! And it was like, man, we're going to have to do that again. But we ended up using that shot in the movie for some reason, and I think you'll find that the audio of the guys going, whoa, is the actual audio of them freaking out in the car because they thought I was some crazy driver, which I was, but I didn't mean to be. It's just that the big red car accelerator kind of stuck and just went, and we used that take. So that's one funny story. There's probably others which I'll give some thought to over the weeks and months and what might become years of me answering your wiggly questions. I'm sure I'll come up with some other interesting stories from behind the scenes. But for now, that will have to do. Okay, we've got another question here from Fred. I don't know how to pronounce your last name, Fred. I'm sorry, but it's a great question. Do you have any crazy experiences you had working with the Wiggles? And if so, can you please tell us? And also, what was your favourite guest to work with? Crazy experiences with the Wiggles. I don't know about crazy. We had a lot of fun experiences, a lot of fun stories. Gee, I don't know where to start there, but I'm just trying to think of crazy. Do we have any crazy experiences? Look, I guess what your phrasing or your frame of reference for crazy would be and what mine would be might be different. I guess one thing that we always found interesting was, particularly when we went to the US, we were always astounded at the lengths people would go to try to meet us. That to us seemed crazy. And I'm not saying that in a way that I want to offend people, because I don't think anybody is crazy. It just seemed so strange to us as these 4 teachers from Australia that people really badly wanted to meet us. And, I remember being in the US on tour, and we had tour buses. The number of times that our bus driver would tell us that people had been following the bus from town to town. And, this is why to us it seemed crazy, because we would finish our shows at night time and we would kind of hit the road at about 9 o'clock at night, I guess. If we finished a show at 8 o'clock, we'd generally go backstage, have our showers, get changed, relax a little bit in the venue, but then go and get on the bus, wait for all of the crew that we had to wait for before heading off. And we'd hit the road about 9 o'clock. And some nights we'd drive 5, 6, 7 or 8 hours. But our drivers would tell us that some cars would be following the bus this whole time. It's like driving through the night. I mean, it was crazy enough that we were doing it, but that people would follow the bus just to meet us at the hotel. It seemed crazy to us, because we're just 4 guys. I mean, it just seems strange. I mean, we loved what we did. We did it for the children, and that was the main thing for us. And so for people to travel through the night for the chance to meet us was just like out of this world. So, to answer your question about crazy experiences, I guess from my point of view, that would be a crazy experience. But lots of interesting things happened with the Wiggles. Just things between us, between the 4 guys. I mean, there'd be so many stories that I could tell you about things that happened on stage. And, to me, they seem crazy or interesting, but to you guys, they might not. I mean, I guess you kind of had to live it to understand what would seem crazy. And you'd have to know more about the personalities of who we are and who we were back then and the way we got on together. So, I mean, there's heaps and heaps of stuff to tell, and hopefully over the time of talking to you all, I'll get to tell you some of these stories. But yeah, look, okay, so here's a crazy story in my book. This is crazy. In the early days of doing shows here in Australia, we'd do 4 shows a day, and those shows would be about 50 minutes each. And I used to do magic tricks in the Wiggles, you know, the little magic things, and I became this character called Magic Greg. And generally, the other guys loved this part of the show because they'd leave me on stage to do the magic trick, and Jeff would be there playing the piano, just providing some background music. And it kind of came to this thing where every now and then I'd refer to Jeff on the piano. I'd say, "Hey, Jeff, did you happen to see that?" And he'd kind of just nod his head. Then all of a sudden, one day, I said, "Hey, Jeff, did you see that?" And this voice said, "Yes, I did." And it was like Jeff's lips didn't move. And I thought, okay, well, who's saying that? It obviously wasn't Jeff. And knowing Anthony and his mischievous way of doing things, it was Anthony making a voice for Jeff. So it became part of the show where I would say, "Hey, Jeff, did you see that?" And he'd go, he'd mouth, and Anthony would say something. "Yes, I did." So knowing, if you know anything about the personality of Anthony and how mischievous he can be on stage sometimes for the want of creating spontaneity on stage, what Jeff started out saying, "Yes, I did," or "Yes," very brief, became very long-winded. So Jeff had to try and lip sync to what Anthony was saying. So it became this funny thing of Jeff and I having this banter on stage with Jeff never knowing what he actually had to lip sync to. So we would find these ways of making the same show every day different, which was really cool, you know, and that's what, it was really that, that sense of it not being a scripted show, but it had a format to it, and it was the same show every day. It was the same songs we did, and we knew roughly what was going to be happening. You know, it was, you know, we would say this, we would say that, but then things would get changed every now and then, and that made the show evolve, and it became something different. So it was things like that where Anthony really kind of threw spanners in the works for us to keep us on our toes. But it was just funny too, you know, and it got to the point where I think Jeff was speaking with an Irish accent, "Top of the morning to you, Greg," and all this kind of stuff. It was really quite funny. I don't know if the audience ever got it, there's another story which I might have told before somewhere, or one of the other guys might have told it. But Anthony started out as Captain Feathersword. Well, here we go. Okay, talk. I've only answered 3 questions again, but hopefully you like these stories. Anthony started out as Captain Feathersword, and in the early days of doing the Wiggles shows, it was very low budget. It was just the 4 of us doing the characters. And we were working 7 days a week, so we were doing shows 7 days a week, day in, day out. And we ended up, to give Anthony a bit of a break and also to give us a bit of light-hearted relief, Sundays were Jeff's day to be Captain Feathersword. So in our live shows, every Sunday became Jeff's day of being Captain Feathersword. And, you know, he did a decent job. He was no Anthony, and he was certainly no Paul Paddock, but he did his own interpretation of Captain Feathersword, which for us provided great amusement on a Sunday when we were going crazy after doing 7 days straight of Wiggles shows. So Jeff would come out and he would tickle the Wiggles and say, you know, "Arr, me hearties, I'm Captain Feathersword, I'm here to tickle you." And we'd all laugh and respond, and he'd do the Captain Feathersword song, "Captain Feathersword, he loves to dance, he will show you how. Captain Feathersword, he loves to dance, I will show you now." Well, he'd do it in his Jeff voice, which was, kind of a piratey kind of voice. Anyway, long story short, after doing a number of months of 7 days a week and 4 shows a day, we decided to get some additional actors in to help us out. So we got somebody to play Dorothy the dinosaur and somebody to play Captain Feathersword. And it just so happened that on this particular tour, the guy that was doing Captain Feathersword and Wags the dog, his wife was Dorothy the dinosaur. So they'd been touring with us for a while. That was Paul and Dawn Rogers. So they were doing that tour. And we're in a little country town here in Australia called Whyalla. And I think we only did 3 shows that day. And it is a small town. And in our 3rd show, it was a Sunday, Not many people were at this show, in our third show in Whyalla. There was probably, I reckon, 20 people there. So we'd done 2 shows that were probably sold out, but the third show hadn't sold out as well because everybody in Whyalla had seen the show already. And we decided that out of the blue, after probably a couple of years of Jeff not having to do a Captain Feathersword show, we were going to bring back Jeff as Captain Feathersword this day. Now, I think we decided it during the show. So Anthony kind of sidled up alongside Jeff and said, Jeff, you're doing Captain Feathersword. We're bringing back Captain Feathersword Sundays. So we told Paul that he wasn't doing Captain Feathersword that day. This is Paul Rogers, not Paul Paddock. This is before Paul Paddock was with us. So this must have been 93, I reckon. Might have been 92 even. Not sure. But anyway, Captain Feathersword Sunday was back for Jeff. And Jeff had not rehearsed it with us after maybe a year or so of not doing it. And let me just say that in this hall with 20 people in it, you know, they were responding quite well to the rest of the show. But when Captain Feathersword came out, you could hear a pin drop. Jeff did not remember his lines. He didn't remember the purpose of the skits. And, and we were no help to him. We just stood there on stage laughing at him and laughing at the fact that Captain Feathersword Sundays were back and these poor people in Whyalla were getting dudded. So I apologise to those people that were at that third show in Whyalla on that Sunday. We just sprung it on Jeff at the last minute during the show. He didn't know what was about to happen, and nor did we, nor did you. So I apologise for that. But this is what being with the Wiggles was like. It was not, you know, people often will say to us, did you set out to conquer the world, or did you set out to make an empire? Did you set out? We didn't set out to do anything. And this is just an example of how fortuitous it was that we were able to do as well as we did, because we didn't set out to do all those things. We just set out to create good quality children's content, and that was our focus. You know, we were still those larrikin guys, those 4 teachers, those 4 blokes, those 4 friends. We weren't these big producers. We weren't these people that were like, okay, don't deviate from the script. You can't deviate from that. It's got to be this and it's got to be that. That, if we were like that, I don't think the Wiggles would have worked. And it's these little stories, and more will come out over the time that I'm talking to you, but it's these little stories that sort of exemplify what really made the Wiggles successful. And it was that we were genuine. We were there to have fun, not at the expense of anybody. I guess maybe that day we did have fun at the expense of the audience, but that wasn't the intention. The intention was to create something that was spontaneous on stage, and it was about giving Jeff that experience to be Captain Feathersword again. And it wasn't until he came out on stage that we realised that was a mistake, because he had forgotten how to be Captain Feathersword. But you know, they're kind of the stories that make the Wiggles the Wiggles. Going to stop talking again now and get back to the questions, because boy oh boy, this is going to be a long old YouTube video, this one. Now I've got to get this guy off the screen. He's in landscape mode. I need him to be in portrait mode, I think, to be able to, yep, there we go, to be able to get to the questions. I'm going to try and pick up where we left off. Crazy experiences, yes, I've done that one, Fred, thank you very much. Okay, this looks like it's from Will Wiggle 51. Do you still have any props or original music clips or film that was never released to the public? And if so, what are they? Now, this is probably going to answer somebody's question that I saw that's going to come up later. And it's to do with what I think is probably Wiggles TV series number 6 that I was a part of. But it was right at the time that I was leaving the group in 2006. So this would, I mean, there'd be stacks of stuff that we probably shot in terms of live shows and things that never saw the light of day. There'd be little bloopers and clips and things that we shot too, but this, I think we shot the whole series of what was supposed to be called Wiggle and Learn. So there's a whole series of that was shot with me that never saw the light of day. I think the Wiggles might have since released some clips of that. I don't think they've released the whole thing. But when I left the group at that point in time, they knew that they were going to have to reshoot that again with Sam when he came in. So they reshot that with Sam, and I think it was released under the name of Wiggle and Learn. So that was what was shot with me. And it was interesting. I don't know if they did it the same way with Sam, but when we did it, all the songs were sung live. So we had a little band in the studio with us there when we were filming, and the band were playing in the corner. So that was made up of John Field, Dom Lindsay. Oh gosh, I can't even remember who else was in it. John O'Grady, I think, might have been in it as well on bass guitar, and a mate of Dom's who played accordion. I can't remember his name. Great musicians, and I think he also played bouzouki as well, that gentleman, George, I think his name was. Sorry, George, I'm sure it was George, but I can't remember your last name. But yeah, just a small group of musos, and so they'd play the songs and we'd sing them live. So yeah, that was a lot of fun doing that one, but that's probably never seen the light of day. I think there might be one clip out there of something or other. Maybe the Wiggles will release some more stuff. So let's hope they do, because it's actually they probably won't, but because it's got me in it, and there's no point releasing that old stuff anymore, except for you guys, the older generation who like seeing that stuff. But it would make no sense for them to release it really for children to watch. We did film the last tour that I did with the Wiggles in 2012. So when I went back in 2012, when they asked me to go and rejoin the group, which was only supposed to be for 8 months, but then Murray and Jeff decided to leave at the end of that year. So I then stayed on till the end of the year, which was including the Australian tour, which was what we called the big show here in Australia. We filmed that very last concert, which I'd love to see, because there would have been a fair bit of emotion in that concert, and I think I've seen something of, we did a kind of spontaneous version of Rockin' All Over the World, but we called it Wiggling All Over the World, which was a Creedence Clearwater song, I think, or was it John Fogerty? It might have been John on his own, actually. Status Quo did a version of it, but I know John's done it, and having worked with John in the past, which brings me back to another question that I haven't answered yet, John... We worked with him and we thought, well, let's do Rockin' All Over the World, but we'll do it as Wiggling All Over the World. But I've never seen the video. So it does exist, but I don't think it's seen the light of day. So that brings me back to that question that Fred asked earlier and I didn't answer. Or was it Fred? It was somebody who said, who's your favourite person that you've worked with, as a guest duet? Well, there's been a lot of people that we did guest duets with, and one that I was really thrilled to meet was Barry Williams, who played Greg Brady, because I grew up watching the Brady Bunch, and I guess the character Greg Brady was a bit of a idol of mine, because my name was Greg, and he was this sort of mature, cool dude, and he got into music, and there was this episode where they did this great musical performance. I think they were called the Platters, the Silver Platters, that's right, because they had bought their parents a silver platter for their wedding anniversary. They didn't have enough money to get it engraved, so they went on this talent show to try and win some money to get the platter engraved. And these songs that they sang were just brilliant songs. But then later Greg became, I think it was Johnny Bravo. He wanted to have a music career. So I looked up to Greg Brady, and then years down the track, somehow, I think Barry Williams had a little boy who was into the Wiggles, and he got in touch with us and we asked him if he wanted to be a part of one of our videos, and he said yes. So that was a real thrill. So I remember Paul Field, who's Anthony's brother, who's one of the managers of the Wiggles, he's probably the only manager now, he and I went into Sydney to pick Barry Williams up from his hotel. And when we got there to pick him up, he was just kind of sitting down having a cup of coffee or whatever. And the Wiggles is usually all about, work. It's, time is money. Let's get this done. Let's get into this. And Barry was there having a cup of tea, and he said, oh, come on, guys, sit down and we'll just have a cup of coffee. And we kind of sat there for a while. I think Paul and I were both kind of feeling, well, look, this is wonderful. We're getting to spend this time talking with Barry Williams, this major star. But really, people waiting for us back at the studio, we can't keep everybody waiting. So it was kind of a little bit hard to get across to Barry that we kind of needed to get moving on this. But once we got over that, we drove back to the studio with Barry and shot the song with him. And yeah, we became quite good friends with Barry. We visited him at his house in LA when we were there one time, which is a really lovely gesture. For him to invite us to his house for afternoon tea was just really generous of him. So, we met so many of these people over the years that were people that we'd looked up to over a period of time. I mean, Jerry Seinfeld, Robert De Niro, Barry Williams, John Fogerty, Mick Fleetwood, even Neil Sedaka came to one of our shows. So there were stacks of people that we met. Some of them we stayed in touch with more than others, like John Fogerty we met and we did a couple of songs with him. We stayed in touch with John for a number of years. Just really good people, and just, it's kind of weird. It's probably like, when you guys say, can you tell us any of your crazy experiences? Well, these are probably crazy experiences for these other people too. The fact that they met the Wiggles and performed on a Wiggles DVD with them, that's probably really bizarre for them. And it's bizarre for us too, to think that we're performing these songs with these people that we've idolised for many, many years. Anyway, focus. I'm going to answer one more question, and then I'm going to have to call it quits for the day, because I've got lots of other things I've got to do. So moving on, do the Wiggles have a vault? And what happens to concerts that are filmed but never released? Well, I kind of touched on that already. I reckon they do have a vault, and there would be so much stuff in that vault. And the vault is probably now full of formats of video and whatever that are out of date, because now I'm sure that everything that's shot is done digitally. And back in the early days of filming for the Wiggles, we would have filmed everything on some sort of, beta film or whatever it was called. I don't know, Digibeta. Well, that even came after some of the earlier stuff. But there's all this stuff that the Wiggles would have. I reckon most of it would have been released over time, but there would be some stuff there. Plenty of bloopers, I'm sure, over the years. Stacks of bloopers that will have never seen the light of day. There's some really good bloopers. And they're always fun to watch. So, I don't know. Maybe keep watching the Wiggles channel. You can check the Wiggles out here. This is their YouTube channel here. I think we can link to that if we put something here, and you can click on that and you can go and see what the Wiggles are posting these days. They probably, like I said, they probably won't post stuff with me in it, but they'd have bloopers from the stuff they're doing now, I'm sure. They're all very good performers, but I reckon they still have bloopers. Everybody has bloopers. So there must be bloopers there. Check it out, see if there's some bloopers there, because they're always fun to see. But okay, how many did I get through today? I don't know, 5 or 6. There's still like 75 to go. I'll get there. I'll keep at it. If you want to ask more questions, post them below. If you like the fact that I'm talking a lot and giving lots of information, give me a thumbs up. If you don't like it, put a thumbs down, okay? And I'll get the message that you don't want me to talk as much, and I'll try and keep the answers a lot more brief. And don't forget, you can subscribe somewhere down here. I think it's probably here is the subscribe thing. If you hit that one, you can subscribe to the channel, because, let's spread the love. Let's spread the love for the Wiggles. Spread the love for the knowledge that I'm giving you about what it's like to be behind the scenes with the Wiggles. Even though there's lots of words here, it's very verbose, but hopefully you're getting an insight into what it was like being one of the Wiggles, and the great phenomenon that's still going on with what they're doing today. It's been an amazing experience, a great part of my life, and obviously it's been a big part of your lives too. So let's keep it going. Share the love, like the video, and subscribe along, and I'll see you real soon. Bye, guys.